go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.
Hello, everyone. Oh, they got a new button here. Well, that's very interesting. I wonder why they have the button like that. I have to test it out someday. Hello, everyone. I have water in my ear, so just give me 1 second. Let's take care of that. Hold on a second, guys. I'm back. I finally washed my hair. Let's start there. That I actually washed my hair. I can't even tell you how long it's been. It's been so long, I was afraid to wash it. Like, that's how your mentality can go sometimes. This is how your mental health can go left. It's been so long that I was getting used to it. And I was thinking, do I really need to wash it? This coming from a person that washed it so often, people were beginning to be afraid for me. Like, don't wash it so much. And because it's locks, and they're like, don't wash it so much, you'll dry the hair out. I'm like, that's what we have materials for. But I was waiting to do something specific. I was waiting to do something specific, and that was ordering some hennas, and then 2 different type of hennas from Esty. So I had to wait for both the products to come through. And then when they did come through, I was looking for black hair dye to get rid of the gray, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I recently found it. But all of this took weeks to come in, right? Funny thing is, before I ordered the henna, I said, Tracey, wash your hair, right? That spirit talking to me, right? And I go, no, I'm not going to wash my hair. The henna will be here in less than a week. Well, it took longer because I was waiting for one type, and then I had to wait for another type, which is called Katam. In any case, here I am, not having washed my hair, to me, for a very long time, which is, oh, child, not my game, but I washed it today. So I'm so happy. Lisa, sweetie, grand rising and good health to all. And hello, Tracey, beloved. Hi, Lisa. How are you today? Thank you so much for your revelation and your typing. So I believe we are on page 30. Oh, we got far last time, 30. But I think I'm going to start from the beginning so that we can understand where the passage is going this time. And as always, as you guys know, I find this to be a very difficult book. I don't know if anybody has read Conversations with God. Very, very difficult book. I don't understand why God would make a book so difficult if he's trying to get us all to come over. So I'm not sure how much of this book was written in Self-Ego by Neil Donald Walsh, or completely with the impression that God has handed over to him. Because sometimes there's a fine line between, are you talking to God, Moses, right? Or Moses, did you become God? Do you understand that? And that's what I'm kind of getting in this book, that Neil may have, I could be wrong, maybe you have to speak with him directly, but may have become God and has this secret language going on with God. And those that get through, well, then you're with me, Neil. You're with God. But I don't understand why anything has to be that hard. I think that we are all operating with a huge lack of understanding, a huge lack. And so we're not in Jesus' days because we're not fighting anymore. We're trying to get someplace else. And we'd like to get there with the simplest of languages as possible. That's what we would like to do. So, I was going to go to downtown Christianstead after my readings today, but it seems to be raining on and off. Just my luck. It's going to go to a store that only opens on Saturday. Just my luck. But when I'm done here in Christianstead, it's like Florida. It rains and then it completely disappears, and you don't know that it ever rained. But this is like its third bout of rain today. So sometimes when it rains, people don't work, right? They don't feel motivated to work, especially if they own their own business. It's a Caribbean thing. You wouldn't understand. All right. Let's start on page 30. And God, please help me. Please help me with divine knowledge. Hi, Tiffany. Good morning and good health. How are you, sweetie? How are you? Drink some water. Okay, now let's get back over to reading. Page 30 at the top. Knowing is a divine state, yet the greatest joy is in being. Oh boy, it's starting off really good. Knowing something is a divine state. Being that something is your greatest joy. So I paraphrased the second time. So what I like to say about that, especially in the metaphysical world, there's many people that is investing in the metaphysical world, right? They're learning, they're investing in getting information, they're in the closet, right? And loving the new information that is coming through for them. And they're excited, right? And the knowledge is so wonderful and so divine to get this new knowledge, like this secret stored information in the cosmos and the planets and Reiki and yoga and crystals. Oh, crystals, right? Many other things I can't even mention in the metaphysical world. But I'm just choosing the metaphysical world as an example because that's the world I am in. And so the knowledge is so divine. It's so delectable. It's so tasteful, right? I don't know about you, but when I see a crystal, I just want to kiss it because I believe in the information that I've received about the crystal. I believe in the look of it. I believe that, rose quartz will bring me love, will produce love out of me. I believe that, right? Because I have the knowledge of it, right? Which is part of your growth, part of my growth, part of everyone's growth, especially with the planets, many planets going into Pisces. A lot of this divine knowledge is going to be prevalent, strong, like openly talked about, like bringing crystals to work, right? And showing off your knowledge, right? And that's going to be a beautiful state to invest in. It's going to be amazing to breathe and read and research all the things in a metaphysical care that you're interested in. It's going to be amazing. The next, I don't know, next maybe 10 years. And that includes, astrology, astronomy, and how they're all interconnected with our souls and with other people's souls, with your children's souls. Like the knowledge is going to come through, and the want for the knowledge is going to come through so strong. And the ability to talk about things that you know now, right? It's going to be beautiful. So that's the part where it says knowing is a divine state. And I know that feeling in a metaphysical world to just eat up everything. And you're so quiet when you're learning, right? You're not a know-it-all when you're learning the metaphysical world because it's too new to you. It's too new. So if you're too much of a know-it-all, then I feel like you're limited in what you are portraying. But things are going to get sped up in your world, right? In my world, it was slow because there wasn't enough information out there for me to have a full essence. I had to dig and dig and dig, and it took years, right? For you guys, it's the internet, right? Boom, information's there. YouTube, boom, information is there for you. It's going to be beautiful for you and fast. Fast. Knowledge is a divine state. It is, right? Yet the grandest joy, the greatest joy, the grandest joy is in being. Who are you? Who do you plan to become with this knowledge? Where is this leading you? Because all this knowledge should lead you to a particular type of person now. And you don't have to get there right now because that's not what's required. The knowledge is required. Yet the grandest joy is in being. And that's why I don't know when my birth was in the metaphysical world. I know I've been in the metaphysical world for 30 years. Easy. And that's from, adulthood, 30 years. I was in the metaphysical world from a child, but I didn't understand the world. But from a knowledgeable place of, there's something here that I vested in my 20s. My rebirth in a metaphysical world is when I could say, I'm a psychic. I tried everything in the beginning. I tried intuitive, spiritual, communicator. I tried, all kinds of faux names that didn't suit what I was trying to convey. Anything but a psychic. Because I knew that in the Black community, psychic was going to bring out horrible feelings for people. And I didn't want people to be put off by me, by a title. But it's funny that when I didn't give myself the right title for me, I never could be. I still stood outside the gate. I might have been out of the closet, But I was standing very close to the closet in case I need to open it and go back in, which I did several times. Because there were many times when I got called out my face for being me, whatever the title I had given myself. Because the other thing that I noticed is that when I wasn't direct with people, they would look at me questionable. But what are you saying? They used to say to me. But what are you? But who are you? But what does that mean? And then I got frustrated because I knew I was lying. I knew I was covering something up. I knew I wasn't being in my joyfulness. But how do I be in my joyfulness without getting hurt? I could get hurt physically. I could definitely get hurt verbally. I don't want to be attacked. Knowing is a divine state, yet the greatest joy is in being. And one day I figured it out. And one day I said, I'm a psychic. I didn't say it too loudly now. Wait, what? What? Oh, I'm a psychic. You're a psychic? What? Yeah, I'm a psychic. And boom, I was in my being. The minute I owned my spot in this world, the minute I planted my feet properly on the ground, no longer flying and escaping away what I considered was dangerous, for me to openly say, this is who I am. I'm a psychic. Boom, I landed, both feet on the ground. Knowing is a divine state. Knowledge is knowing. Yet the greatest joy is when you become. The grandest joy is in being. Wow. That's the way this chapter starts. Being is achieved only after experience. Who am I talking to? Who wants to be all this, that, and the third in the metaphysical world, but you don't have enough experience? I'm not stopping you, right? Because I know you have a place somewhere. But it's important to recognize how being is about experience. The evolution is in this: knowing, experiencing, being. That is the evolution. KEB. Knowing, experiencing, being. This is the Holy Trinity, the true that is God. God the Father is knowing, the parent of all understandings, the begetter of all experiences. You cannot experience that which you do not know. Have any of you guys ever written anything? One of the first rules in writing is write what you know. One of the first rules. God the Father is knowing, the parent of all understanding, the begetter of all experiences. You cannot experience that which you do not know. God the Father is, God the Son is experiencing. Does anybody recognize, or have you ever heard that God sent Jesus down to experience through him, that the whole purpose was to God to understand humans by Jesus's own soul? Have you ever heard that? God the Son is experiencing the embodiment, the acting out of all that the Father knows of itself. For you cannot be that which you have not experienced. I like that. Do you know that even if you write a fantasy, you should still have a knowing about that fantasy? God, the Holy Spirit, is being. This is the disembodiment of all that the Son has experienced of itself. The simple exquisiteness possible only through the memory of the knowing and the experiencing. Excuse me. The simple bliss, the simple being is a bliss. It is a God state after knowing and experiencing itself. It is that for which God yearned in the beginning. The simple being is bliss. It is a God state after knowing and experiencing itself. It is that for which God yearned in the beginning. You know, when I first got here to the Caribbean, I knew I would be happy. I didn't know how happy I was going to be. And I found that many days upon many days, just being is blissful. Not just waking up. It's bigger than just waking up, right? Because for me, it's never going to be about waking up anymore. For me, it's going to be about the quality that I put into waking up, right? So you'll never hear me say, "Oh, child, God is good. He woke me up today." Well, your body's meant to wake up. That's the way God designed you. That's how good God is, because it was designed that way. What God wants more out of you is not to be of gratitude that you just woke up, but that you create a state of blissfulness. Because if you create a state of blissfulness, which is a state of happy, there's not too much evil you can put out in the world, because you would feel the divine shift from one being to another. And when you like blissfulness, I mean really like it, when you sit in it for long periods of time and you realize, is this God-like? Is this happy? Is this like what is this feeling when I have nothing to fight? What's that feeling? I know what it's like to be stressed. I know what it's like to fight. I know what it's like to argue. I do all those things very, very well. I know misery. I know uncomfortability. I know anything that creates negativity, because that's all people in general know to invest in. So we pass that down. We transfer the energy. We make sure we hand it over like flowers. Here's my misery. I give it to you. I put it upon you. You know, I take my ugly and I make sure you feel ugly. That's all we've ever done. Right? And so imagine if you had a state of blissfulness, a state of being. God, the Holy Spirit, is being, the disembodiment of all that the Son has experienced, the simple exquisiteness possible only through the memory of the knowing and the experiencing. This simple being is called bliss. It is God's state after knowing and experiencing itself. It is that for which God yearned in the beginning. Our own God yearned for bliss. And he had to recognize in himself, God had to recognize that he had to have experience in order to understand blissfulness or how to get back to blissfulness. And the experience was through Christ Jesus. Oh boy. Are you guys okay? Of course, you are well past the point where you must have it explained to you that the Father, Son descriptions of God have nothing to do with gender. We do know that. I use here the picturesque speech of your most recent scriptures. Much earlier holy writings placed this metaphor in a mother-daughter context. Neither is correct. Your mind can best hold the relationship as parent-offspring, or that which gives rise to and that which is risen. Adding the third part of the Trinity produces this relationship, that which gives rise to, that which is risen, that which is. This triune reality is God's signature. It is the divine pattern. The three in one is everywhere, found in the realms of the sublime. You cannot escape it in matters of dealing with time and space, God and consciousness, or any of the subtle relationships. On the other hand, you will not find that the true truth in any of life's gross relationships. The true truth is recognized in life's subtle relationships by everyone dealing with such relationships. Some of your religious have described the true truth as Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's how I grew up. I was Catholic, so we grew up saying the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Some of your psychiatrists use the terms subconscious, conscious. Some of your psychiatrists use the terms superconscious, conscious, and subconscious. Some of your spiritualists say mind, body, and spirit. Some of your scientists see energy, matter, ether. Some of your philosophers say a thing is not true for you until it is true in thought, word, and deed. When discussing time, you speak of three things: only past, present, future. Simply, there are three moments in your perception: before, now, after. Whether considering the points in the universe or various points in your own room, you recognize here, there, and the space in between. In matters of gross relationships, well, let's go over that real quick, and how connected we all are to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the way God had put it first: knowing, experiencing, being. The true truth is recognized in life's subtle relationships by everyone dealing with such relationships. Some of your religious have described the true truth as the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Some psychiatrists, superconscious, conscious, subconscious. Your spiritualists say mind, body, spirit. Let me just highlight that a little bit more. Some of your scientists see energy, matter, ether. Some of your philosophers say a thing is not true for you until it is true in thought, word, and deed. And discussing time, you speak of three things: past, present, future. Similarity, there are three moments in your perception: before, now, and after. In terms of spatial relationships, whether considering the points of the universe or various points in your own room, you recognize here, there, and the space in between. All right. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, conscious, superconscious, conscious, subconscious, mind, body, spirit, energy, matter, ether, thought, word, and deed, past, present, future, before, now, and after, here, there, and the space in between. Wow. Hi, Stephen. How are you today? In matters of gross relationships, what you recognize is no in between. That is because gross relationships are always dyads. Let me just look that up real quick. I apologize, guys. Dyad meaning. Oh, dyad. Something that consists of two elements or parts. What is an example of a dyad? Parent and child, teacher and student, husband and wife, brother and sister. Got it. What is a dyad relationship? A dyad is composed of two people who relate to one another, two friends, parent, child, patient, therapist, romantic partners. Okay, let me see if I can put it together. In matters of gross relationship, you recognize no in between. That is because gross relationships are always dyads, whereas relationships of the higher realm are invariably triads. Hence, in gross relationship, there is left, right, up, down, big, small, fast, slow, hot, cold, and the greatest dyad ever created, male, female. There are no in between with these dyads. My thing is, hold on, guys. I purposely have a thing that I use. All right. Oh, I'll use this for right now. I have no choice. Oh, it's right here. Silly me. To separate it from my book so I don't have to keep holding the book. Let me see. Go back a little. Upright, big, fast, slow, hot, cold. The greatest dyad ever created was male, female. There are no in-betweens with these dyads. A thing is either one thing or the other, or some greater or lesser version in relationships to one of these polarities. Hence, there is left, right, up, down, big, small, fast, slow, hot, cold, and the greatest dyad ever created was male, female. There's no in-between with these dyads. A thing is either one thing or the other, or some greater or lesser version in relationship to these polarities. Now, I'd like to stop for a minute and talk about the dyad of male-female and how metaphysically, astronomically, in the astros, the cosmos, with the planets, with the shaping of the way the planets are taking hold and what the meaning of these planets and the way they're all coming together for change. When we get to the male female, notice how in your Zoom calls, for those of you that know Zoom, you sometimes you see a name, sometimes you might see a title, but a lot of times you'll get parenthesis, he, comma, she. Now, at first I thought that was a transgender thing. That's what I thought. To not want for society to label them and package them in a corner the way society did with my generation and generations since, right? So I invested in this change of title, particularly in Zoom, right? There's something about Zoom that gives you the ability to reinvent yourself, which I thought was so odd. I thought Zoom was odd. I thought Zoom created a whole new experience for folks that I thought was fascinating. And so when I say odd, I mean it in such a way where it's like, does anybody see the change that's happening during COVID? Is it just enough to say this is occurring, or can you actually see the restructuring of events in our lives? Did anybody else see that? It wasn't enough that we were in COVID. It was so much more. COVID changed everything, even though there were people that want to go back to what it used to be. Technically, you can never go back to that ever again. And so the fight is on, right? The fight is on for change. Whether you like it or not, it's not change problem. Do you understand that? Whether you like it or not, change is not the problem. What will be your problem is your ability to understand how important that once something has been structurally changed, you cannot go back. Try as you might. You have to learn to accept that something has structurally changed, and maybe it is your job to figure out to go with the flow, right? I remember when my dad, it's going to be a lot of memory today. Clearly, this episode is about memory. I remember when my dad and the kids started wearing skinny pants, right? That was a problem. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I was like, Dad, yo, I get it. I get it for your generation and from where you're coming from. I don't know if you're going to change it by screaming and yelling in your little house how much you don't like something, right? And you certainly can't influence my son because my son has a mother that's buying the goddamn skinny pants. So, Dad, you're going to waste how much energy complaining about something that is beyond you and me, right? And what happened? My dad lost. He's dead and gone, right? And skinny pants prevailed, right? Right. And I bring that up to say my dad felt like the skinny pants wasn't masculine enough. See, y'all just think y'all invented he, she. No, he, she was a problem long before somebody could say he, she, right? When boys started wearing long hair, that was a whole he, she moment. in my world, right? Another thing my dad didn't like, I just don't understand why they gotta wear long hair. And I was like, Dad, I, I don't, I don't understand what the problem is. At the time, I didn't know I could lock my son's hair up and allow him to have the freedom of letting his locks grow long. I didn't know those options were available to me. But had it been available to me, and I mean the knowledge of, we're going back to knowledge, I would have done it. Because I would have rather had that there was knowledge in locking your hair and then experiencing the locking of the hair and then moving beyond and being that. Little things, right? So I bring that up because of the dyad, what did it say here? The greatest dyad ever created was male, female. People, get over yourselves. Get over yourselves. This is going to be a whole blending of are you male or are you female? And nobody's going to want to answer that. No one. And I'm kind of at that point now. I'm kind of at the point of wanting to put in my Zoom, Tracey Brown, he, comma, she. Because all of a sudden it's not about gender. It's about, which I'm recognizing right now as I'm talking to you, the gross relationships. When you recognize there is no in between. And the greatest dyad, the greatest gross relationship is the dyad male-female. One of the worst things I find in relationships is men not embracing their femininity. Women, for the most part, depending upon what culture, not sure if I'm speaking to every culture, but for the most part, there are cultures out there that have had to be both male and female. And then the man gets mad when when the female is being everything it needs to do to survive. When the male doesn't recognize that in order to survive, they have to rise up their femininity. That all one thing male, all one thing female hadn't worked. The experiment failed immensely. And so when we get those families, that's like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I salute that. I salute that. I want to see that male. Look at Rihanna and ASAP and how the men lost their mind when they saw he shadowed her, he held the baby, she was in front of him, forging away, and had her hand back, touching his fingertips. And the picture showed her in a forward motion, like not being held back because the fingertips that were touching was ever so delicate. So that if he had to, he would release her to let her do what she needs to do. And I got the baby. I will hold the fort down. And many men missed the opportunity to rise up to ASAP. You guys got to remember, Rihanna is sending messages out there. You all are going to miss it because you all aren't ready, because you want to stay in this gross relationship where you recognize no in between. And these gross relationships are always dyads. And the male, female is the greatest of all. To not have an in between is going to be our biggest downfall. And you can't survive if you don't figure that out. Let's just breathe a minute. Just breathe. In gross relationships, there are no in-betweens in these dyads. A thing is either one thing or the other, or greater or lesser. Within the realm of gross relationships, nothing conceptualized can exist without a conceptualization of its opposite. Most of your day-to-day experience is foundationed in this reality. Within the realm of gross relationships, within the realm of sublime relationships, nothing which exists has an opposite. All is one, and everything progresses from one to the other in a never-ending circle. Time is such a sublime realm in which what you call past, present, and future exists interrelationally. That is, they are not opposites, but rather parts of the same whole, progressions of the same idea, circles of the same energy, aspects of the same immutable truth. If you conclude from this past, present, and future exist as one and the same time, you are right. Yet now is not the moment to discuss that. We can only get into this in much greater detail when we explore the whole concept of time, which we will do later, says God. The world is the way it is because it could not be any other way and still exists in the gross realm of physicality. Earthquakes and hurricanes and floods and tornadoes and events that you call natural disasters are but movements of the elements from one polarity to the other. The whole birth-death cycle is part of this movement. These are the rhythms of life, and everything in gross reality is subject to them because life itself is a rhythm. It is a wave, a vibration, a pulsation at the very heart of the all that is. Illness and diseases are opposites of health and wellness, and you are made manifest in your reality at your behest. You cannot be ill without at some level causing yourself to be. Wow. And you could be well again in a moment by simply deciding to be. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Oh boy, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So I once read a book, Embraced by the Light, and this is kind of connecting with something. Embraced by the Light is a woman that died, later came back to life, but while she died, she met with God. And somehow or another, she was like, can I ask you questions? And God was like, sure, go ahead, ask. And she started asking questions, and what resulted when she came back to life was all the questions that she asked and all the things, hi, Mother of Brats, all the things that God even showed her, right? Came back to earth, kind of miserable. She kind of came back to earth miserable. There was something about her dying that was so beautiful, even though she was leaving kids behind. But God did tell her, well, it's really not your time to actually have to send you back. She was like, no, 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 don't send me back. And God was like, zoop, back in your own body. And so she came back sad and miserable and, having a medical condition. And it took a while to recover. I think it took her a few years to recover. But in the midst, she remembered all these things and she wrote a book. It's called Embraced by the Light. One of my favorite books that I read. Favorite. Years later, it wasn't a book that I would recommend because it had such Catholicism references to it, which is no one's fault. That's her upbringing. And that's how she merged her knowledge through the realm of Catholicism, right? Which means it didn't leave much room for the others. There was room. There wasn't enough room. So I must have read the book at least 20 times. I must have gave the book away. As a matter of fact, I would get the book to reread it, never finishing it after I've already read it, never finishing it because I would always have it to give to somebody else to get over a cycle in their life. And then one day for book club, and you guys can find it on YouTube, I read it. I read it out loud. And because I had grown so much, I read Embraced by the Light when I was in my 20s. And I was a manager in a cancer unit. And this was a book that I handed out to the cancer patients because with cancer, you stay in the hospital for long periods, like you are making these beds your home. They're your bedrooms, and people decorate them and bring, comforters and anything that matters to make them feel good because you're gonna stay the treatments back in the day. I don't know how they do it now, but that's the way it was back in the day. And so I was in charge of a cancer unit and got permission to give out these books to the patients while they were deciding, notice the word that I'm using, deciding to get well. And was that just on them, or was that also a part of them and the doctors together? But one of the things that I read in the book is we can give ourselves our sicknesses depending upon how we associate our lives with depression and misery, and how comfortable are we with that state of being. Now, interesting enough, notice how I started out. I started out with feeling bliss here in the Caribbean, enjoying all of my cells not being aggravated, but by historical family issues, from my childhood, and then adult issues, and then job, and then crappy bosses, and so on and so forth. Even in the psychic world, I went to one store to work at on Ventura Boulevard. I had a crappy boss, crappy. But he ruled the roost. And so we had no choice but to fit in based upon his discussing realms of his personality from day to day. It was a nightmare. And I stayed there 7, 8 years because I hadn't realized I was stronger than that. I had come to realize that at the time I had a need and he provided a need, and that's all I could do was live day by day, daily, week by week. Do you understand? getting back to the hospital, I gave out these books, and the one thing that I learned is that you can give yourself your own sickness. You can give yourself your own sickness. One of the things I've learned in the spiritual world is that when someone says, how do I put it now? Technically, we're not allowed to pray for someone, technically, right? That if we're going to pray for someone, they should be asking us personally, because you will be surprised how sickness benefits someone. Sickness is the only attention they're ever going to get. And so some people may not want to heal. Some people will bring sickness onto themselves. Because now, guess what? Guess what I'm going through? Oh, it's terrible. Absolutely. Oh, the needles. Oh, the time at the doctor's. And then the doctor, like, I had one doctor and he was just horrible. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And then I tell everyone about my experience. You become your own YouTube star when you talk about your sickness. Because what we discovered in the hospital at the time, I don't believe this anymore with cancer, but at the time, and when I say I don't believe this anymore, there were so many factors that has brought cancer on, which is a lot of it has to do with your environment, the government, you know, there's a lot of reasons why testosterone cancer like popped up out of nowhere. There's a lot of reasons why breast cancer became a thing. It's not supposed to be, right? Could have something to do with the environment, most likely had something to do with food, right? But back in the day, there were like not enough factors to have such a big problem in cancer. And one of the things that we recognize as a hospital staff, not as a scientific fact, but as a hospital staff, is that you can always tell the ones that brought cancer on. They have horrible relationships. Horrible. And sure enough, being a manager in this hospital, I can't even tell you how long I was in this hospital. And I always had to go to the rooms, always greet the patients every morning, whether they had been there 6 months or whether they had just gotten there yesterday, right? It was a morning ritual. Oh, wait. And oh no. It was a morning ritual to go into the patients and greet them. And depending upon my night shift, which I had several of those too, you know, you got to see the families, right? And you would see, you know, certain family members ignore their cancer patients. You would see other family members bully their cancer patients from their bed. The patient is in bed and the person will come in. Uh, Most times it was a wife, you know, that would bully, just bully, like annoyed that she had to come from work and take out a couple of hours, like upset. And other times, what I saw, you know, was men just ignoring the women that they came to see, just sit in a chair. And remember now, back in the day, there was no cell phone. So the ignoring of was obvious. you could slice it. It was almost like there was a door between the patient and the bed. And there was all this disconnect. And you would always look at the situation and feel the energy in the room. I didn't know how psychic I was in the beginning, but you could feel the energy in a room. And you would say, well, this is why you have cancer, sweetie. Sir, this is why you have cancer. So rather than tell them what I see, because I would have gotten fired, I eventually did get fired from this job. I would give them the book in hopes that they could recognize themselves in the book. And my hope was that they would heal from cancer if they realized they were creating the cancer. That there is a way out, that misery is not a thing, that you might have invested in all of this misery and ugly, but that there is a way out. And the way out is with your thought and then action. All right. How did I get there? You cannot be ill. I'm back to the book. You cannot be ill without some level causing yourself to be ill. How powerful is that? Is that something that some of you are just hearing for the first time? Because this is something that could change your lives. You cannot be ill without at some level causing yourself to be ill. Let me know down below if this is something you've heard for the first time, because this could be a game changer to happiness. Choosing not to invest in being ill. What would that look like? Because that means you can't be angry. Because that means you'd have to figure out, why am I angry today? Because anger can create illness. That means not being sad. Why am I sad? If you don't have clinical depression, why are you choosing sadness? Because if you did have clinical depression, there are things that you could do to minimize the feelings of depression, which means you're working on yourself, right? And notice I said clinical depression, because there is a depression that is unavoidable. Depression can be in the DNA, right? You cannot be ill without some level causing yourself to be. That's so profound to me. I mean, profound. I don't want to be ill. I want to be well. I want to be well with my soul. It's almost making me tear up. I don't want to choose illness. I avoided COVID because I chose wellness. I avoided COVID because I didn't listen to anybody. When people are like, oh, you need to not be afraid of COVID. No, COVID is energy. And COVID is real. And COVID is not to be fucked with. Because COVID will get up in your nose and say, what now? I respected COVID. And I was like, okay, bitch, you said stay home. Almost like the goat's blood over the doors when Moses was like, there's a plague coming. There's a plague. Y'all better not go outside, right? And everybody put the goat's blood over their door because that was something that was effective. And the mask could be the version, modern day version of goat's blood. That in this day and age, just staying home was not enough, right? And so if you venture out, put your goat's blood on like a shield of protection, the mask, And if you didn't do the right things, in COVID's mind, not in my mind, not even in God's mind, God's like, I'm sending a plague down, and y'all got simple rules. When I like putting the goat's blood over the door, that was a simple rule, and stay in there until the plague is over. And you know, in the movies or in a book, it looks like the plague took a day. You don't know if the plague took a day. The plague could have taken 3 years. You don't know. TV makes it look like, oh, that plague, that ended. That is overnight? Oh, child. No. The plague is historical. History repeats itself. We're still running into COVID issues, right? And so I go back to COVID and the goat's mask because, you know, you cover your face. And all the fighting that went on over a goddamn mask. Like, it was mortifying to watch. And I was like, God, what do I do? Because I'm, you know, in my mind, I need to help God. I feel like I'm one of God's soldiers. And so I have a YouTube channel. Like, God, what do I do? And God was like, who are you? Who are you? They're my people. So if they're going to come to me early, it's okay, Tracy. Don't panic over my decision and my people. I know every single one of these people. I will greet them when they get here. Whether they're coming early or whether they're coming by old age, it doesn't matter to me. I will greet my people. If you want to help, well, just tell people how they can survive. But you can't bring them to the water. If I can't bring them to listen, who are you? And that's when I was like, okay, I need to stop getting so frustrated and stop saving the world. I'm just going to put my messages out there on how to stay intellectually healthy, physically healthy, spiritually healthy. And I'm just going to let that be a whole thing. That be my whole vibe, right? And then you see, I'll bring others on, like Priestess Ifasheye, to influence all the beautiful herbs out there that could help bring bliss and clarity, right? Yeah, just breathe. Anissa says, I heard this. You can bring on your own illnesses, and also being around toxic people can also bring on illnesses. Right. And just a side note, what if toxic people are your family members? What if you live with them? Right? I had a client yesterday that was telling me about a toxic situation in a home that she lived in. And I said to her, why are you home? Why are you in that home? She wasn't 15. She wasn't even 19. She was grown, like mediocre grown, right? In her 30s. And I was like, sweetie, at your 30s, this is where you get up, you get out, and you produce some solitary influence for yourself. Because what you go home to every night is toxic. So now, Spirit was telling her to go get your own. Period. And as I was telling her this information from Spirit, I was talking to Spirit and I said, she's not going to hear me though, Spirit. Like, I could tell that wasn't enough for her to say, oh, this is solvable. Just get out. Find a studio apartment. Find something that you can afford. Get out. Because her family relationships was so toxic. It was so toxic. And in a long haul, sometimes you guys don't know I'm begging spirit to help me get through to the person while I'm in the Zoom. They don't know it. And I'm like, go on the other side. Like, I need you to get in their ear. And then slowly you could see the revelation of knowing, you're right. What am I doing? If I want to alleviate toxic people, I have to walk away from toxic people. Boom. Thank you, Anissa, for that. So, you cannot be ill without, at some level, causing yourself to be ill. And you cannot be well again in a moment by simply deciding to be. And you can, oh no, I'm sorry. Oh, that did not sit with me the way I said. I was like, what? I was about to go off on this sentence. I apologize. And you can be well again in a moment by simply deciding to be. Did anyone realize that you have the power to be well? You have the power not to create stress. You have the power not to give yourself headaches. You have the power not to create arguments that make you sick. The power is within thyself. You can be well again in a moment by simply deciding to be. And that would mean when someone is antagonizing you, aggravating you, you can choose to handle it in a way where they don't make you unwell. You decide to be well in a moment's time by simply deciding to be. Huh. That's profound, huh? I like that. Deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen. Wow. Deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen. And worldwide calamities are the result of worldwide consciousness. So, how many of you all believe that you created the earthquake? How many of you all believe you created the Syrian-Turkey earthquake? Because you did. I did. Not just you. You know, I am working on myself, and yet there are times when I don't always have the best thought processes at every moment, but I know that, and yet the thought is already pushed out, like you can't take it back. And so I constantly have to work on my thought and my sarcasm and my lack of caring. I constantly have to constantly work on it. Right? And so deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen. Have you ever laid anybody out? Do you know that you thought about it before you laid them out? Unless you add drinking to it or drugs, then maybe that might add to your thoughts and action that contributed to some part of, you know, arguments. But for the most part, if we just leave drugs and alcohol out, if we add it, no, we have to add it because no one drinks and not know their personality. Somebody would have told you, you know, when you drink, you get crazy, you black out. So that means you're fully informed, and that means you have to stop drinking, right? So you do know. You can't say, oh, I blacked out, because blacking out is not a condition that happens overnight. It's a condition that occurs over and over and over again. And so you choose to keep drinking, or you choose to keep drinking to create bad behaviors to then justify it. Well, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drinking. My point to you is deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen, even if you're drinking and it's not your fault. The fact that you chose to do drugs, you chose to drink, you chose. All right, am I good? Okay, it's getting exhausting. And worldwide calamities are the result of worldwide consciousness. Did we ever talk about that? How everything is energy? And I don't know about the other countries, but what do you think is happening with all these American gross mass shootings? What do you think happens with all that energy? The energy that one person can create comes down to the energy of the deaths that they created, comes down to the energy of the city that's created, comes down to the energy of the state that still won't do anything about guns, that comes down to the energy of people fighting, and yet everybody wants to make a title of strong. You're never strong in a mass shooting. You're never asked to be strong. You should never be strong. You should cry. You should wail. You should tell your politicians enough is enough. But being strong is a no-no. Because the minute they put up that title of Saugus strong, Boston strong, Texas strong, Uvalde strong, what you say is we stop, because at the point of being strong, we are no longer working for a solution. They did it to black women all our lives. Oh man, black women are strong. We're not. We cry. We bleed just like you. We get depressed, we get sad, we get exhausted. Black women are not strong. That's a title you gave us so we wouldn't complain. I like to whine a lot. I don't want to do this. Well, why do I have to get up? Well, why can't I have a job that lets me start at 12 o'clock and I still make $10,000 a day? I don't understand, God. I just want what I want. I'm not trying to be strong anymore. I'm not trying to be your everything, whoever you are, man, white man, black man, job. No, I'm just going to cry at work. You think I haven't cried at work, guys? Oh my God. If you knew some of the stories, oh my God. The story of Tracey, oh my God. There was one time I got this referral, not a referral, a review of my job. I worked so hard at whatever job I had. You rest assured, I work hard at it. And this supervisor gave me a 10-cent raise. And I said, what am I supposed to do with 10 cents? I don't understand. How does anyone get 10 cents? Except that 10 cents meant that she didn't like me. And she gave me some snarky answer. And she goes, sign the review. And I said, no. And she goes, you have to sign the review. And I said, I don't have to do anything. I will not sign this review. Well, Tracy, I'm just gonna report this. Okay. Okay. Because somebody needs to figure out why you gave me 10 cents. I left her office and went out on the floor, and the first friend that I found, I collapsed in their arm and I started crying. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was so funny. I collapsed and we both fell to the floor. And she's going, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I was like, ah. So funny. HR found out about it and they changed the review to $1. From 10 cents to $1. Now, I'm not bragging about a whole fucking dollar. I'm bragging at the effect that change can make when you decide how your disappointments can be challenged. I wasn't happy about the dollar. They wanted me to be happy about the dollar, but I was. I was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." Wasn't happy about the dollar. I was happy. Oh Lord, I was happy that I created change, that she was not allowed to dump on me and encourage her to think that she had gotten over me. And by the way, this was a black boss. Yeah, sure enough. Deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen, and worldwide calamities are the result of worldwide consciousness. Anissa says, thank you, Anissa. Where your thought flows, your energy will go. Power is in your thought processes. You must be mindful. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting how hard it becomes to choose mindful thinking. It's so hard. But the more you practice it, the better you feel. Right? Do you get that? The more you practice mindfulness and what you say to someone and holding back on your thoughts and understanding that what you can say can affect someone and that maybe what you're saying maybe doesn't need to be said. Or here's the other thing, or saying something, this is the opposite end of it, saying something, getting corrected, and people not forgiving you. And you're like, oh yeah, I could see that hurt you. And I see it now, but I didn't see it then. But now that you're telling me, I get it. I'm sorry. And they don't let you be sorry. They want to lord that over you because they're so hurt, they invest in the hurt. Back to deep personal disappointments or responses which are chosen. Whew. Your question infers that I should choose these events, that it is my will and desire they should occur. Yet I do not will these things into being. I merely observe you doing so, and I do nothing to stop them because to do so would be to thwart your will. That in turn would deprive you of the God's experience, which is the experience you and I have chosen together. Your question infers I choose these events? Oh, I guess he's saying, God is saying, your question first, I choose these events for you, that it is my will and desire that these issues should occur. Yet I do not will these things into being. I do not will these things into being. I merely observe you doing so. However, I do nothing to stop them. I do nothing when someone, not me, this God, I do nothing when someone decides to pick up a weapon and go to a supermarket. As an example, because to do so would be to thwart your will. That in turn would deprive you of God's experience, which is the experience you and I have chosen together. Do not condemn, therefore, all that you would call bad in the world. Rather, ask yourself, what about this have you judged bad? And what, if anything, you wish to do to change it? So now I get it, because I've always wondered about the increase in America of all these gun laws, right? Gun shootings. And if you, the listener, can choose to have a great day, why doesn't the guy with the gun also not choose to have a good day, right? So it kind of brings me back to, I don't know if you're going to get this reference, but it kind of brings me back to the first artificial heart. And if I remember correctly, I might be wrong, but I think the first artificial heart person died, right? And yet the sacrifice of that person coming to live, and getting that artificial heart then led to correcting and seemingly normal to have things placed in our heart to keep the heart pumping, right? It led to better experiences. So one death led to hundreds to thousands to millions of people living, right? Because there was interest in perfecting in the living, right? Not to have a multiple deaths based upon an artificial heart. The one person that came through literally was born to sacrifice so that others could live, right? But the objective is to make it perfect for others could live, to keep recreating what it is that the heart needs and what mechanical components that can be put in terms of innovation, right? So the same thing goes with school shootings, grocery shootings, same thing, that there has to be a sacrifice, that there is a sacrifice because the will of that person who has the thought in their mind has that relationship with God. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It means that a bad thing can happen, but can we grow from it? And the difference, I'm just now getting this, guys, the difference between an artificial hat and growing from it is the complete opposite from an individual who has it inside their head to do something bad because we've never grown from it. Instead, we glorify it. We make it salacious. We make it shocking. And we don't do anything for mental health to catch something like that ahead of time. And we also don't make our lawmakers do better by us because we don't have to vote them back in. We can fight better to say to our children, our lawmakers, our council members, our neighborhood watches, our city PTAs. We could do more. But what happens instead is that we get these salacious details of some, grievous act, right? And then it just stops. Where's the effort to make sure that things like this go away forever? Because that means education and money in areas of mental health, starting with our children at 5. Parental care, like caring about a parent that is struggling, right? And noticing the signs in schools, right? Don't let a white kid get away with something that's clearly mental health, but you let a black kid get arrested on a dime, right? And so part of what we all have contributed, is not sticking to the fight to make things better after a shooting. Does that make sense? Because if you notice, artificial hearts and the components that have grown to make hearts beat, whatever that is, from artificial heart to a pacemaker to this, that, and the third, right? You don't even hear about it. It's so routine because it's about the quality of the heart, the quality of the life of the person, the individual, and totally forgetting about the quality of life when there's a shooting of any kind, mass shooting. But how do we fix a shooting of any kind? When we ignore neighborhoods back in the day in Compton. To this day, we ignore whole neighborhoods in Chicago. How do we not handle those neighborhoods? And now shootings are just out of control all over. Now you just can't say, look at Compton. Because we didn't work on it when we could have and found the resources necessary and create a format that worked. We could have, we didn't. And now it's rampant. Rampant. And now no one can say, oh, that was a drive-by shooting because that means black, right? Oh, that was a drive-by shooting. That means a black neighborhood. But now when you hear, oh, there was a mass shooting, you think white first. And you're usually shocked when it's a minority. You're like, that was a minority? Sure. Did he have, what? Just breathe. Everybody breathe. We're learning, aren't we? We're learning a lot. Deep personal disappointments are responses which are chosen, and worldwide calamities are the result of worldwide consciousness. Your question infers that I choose these events, that it is my will and desire that these events should occur. Yet, I do not will these things into being. I merely observe you doing so. And God, I do nothing to stop them, because to do so would be to thwart your will. That in turn would deprive you of the God experience, which is the experience you and I have chosen again. So even after the fact of a mass shooting, what do you do with God to make sure that these things never happen again? And I'm not putting you guys on the line. Trust, I'm not asking a handful of my YouTubers. I'm getting you to understand why they keep occurring. Because the shooting goes beyond that. When we're beyond that, what are we doing? Because if we do nothing, it occurs again, only worse. And we've seen it time and time again. Do not condemn, therefore, all that you would call bad in the world. Rather, ask yourself, what about this have you judged bad? And what, if anything, you wish to do to change it? Inquire within rather than without, asking, what part of myself do I wish to experience now in the face of this calamity? What aspect of being do I choose to go forth? For all of life exists as a tool of your own creation, and all of its events merely present themselves as opportunities for you to decide and be who you are. All right, I'm going to stop here because I told you this book kind of is like one big run-on sentence. And I could see that they're going someplace else with the soul. And I don't want to start a soul's journey unless I have enough time, and I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And guess what, guys? I found one of my first business cards. Funny thing is, my first business card has the word psychic in it. And it was probably the very thing that changed my whole life. It was the very thing. It just has my name, Tracey Brown, and the name of the store. But the fact that it has psychic in it was probably the beginning of understanding that I can call myself a psychic. So weird. I found it in this book. Because I'm pretty sure I brought the book from that store. So weird. Life is so funny. Wow. Wow. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I got through to some people. Let me know down below what your feelings are, right? Let me know. I'm interested. I'm curious. I feel like there's a lot of structural changes that are happening with me reading the book, and I hope it's just not me. Am I the only one that's changing? Now, you know I don't believe that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I love you. I thank you. I'll see you later. Bye.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.